Hello, everyone. I'm Cheryl Bassett, and I am with the Expert Entrepreneurs, Expert Epic Entrepreneurs. Don't want to forget the word epic in there. And this is week 3 of our journey, and I am representing the 50s. I feel like I'm in my 20s sometimes. I act like I'm 10, and if you add those together and divide them, I'm really only representing the 30s maybe, but in reality, I'm representing the 50s. So, but I'm very excited. This week, we're going to be talking about relationships. And we had our blab yesterday, and it was a lot of fun. And Dottie was on there with me, and she's going to be joining me again today. And I'm excited about that. So hi, Dottie. How are you?
Hey, Cheryl. It's great to be here. I'm really excited because you are the queen. You are the maven of relationships with Kitchen Table Conversations. So I just want to say thank you for being a part of our 5 generations of E3, as you said, our expert epic entrepreneurs, because without you all participating, I wouldn't have all of this great knowledge, wisdom. And what can I say? I really appreciate everybody that's participating, because I think it's a unique sort of setting with 5 generations of us. And of course, you and I are the upper 2.
Yes, not that we're bragging about that,
Yeah,
right?
not that we're bragging, mind you.
But with that comes so much wisdom. So, that's the good side of it, right? But yeah, and so obviously we have Stephanie for our 20s, and then we have Jennifer for our 30s, Yasmin for our 40s, and then 50s and 60s. So we are on an epic journey with all the generations, and it's really exciting, and I'm really honored to be a part of it. And Dottie, I know this was a lot of your inspiration to pull all this together, and we all came together. That's been quite the relationship, really, in and of itself, right? As we build the relationships with each other. So yesterday we talked about relationships, and what we I think, Dottie, what we found out is that everything is a relationship, everything, right?
Yeah, I mean, Cheryl, think about it. Is there anything in our lives that is not? I mean, if I look out here right now, I'm relating to the environment outside my window. If I have a friend I'm going to get together with lunch, I'm relating to that person. If I have a situation with my dog, I'm relating. So we cannot escape it. And yet we seem to have some opportunities for growth in those areas.
Absolutely. And in fact, one of the things that I think is unique about, not unique, but I guess maybe people don't realize about coaches, because I think this would be true of a lot of coaches, is that all coaches have coaches.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So we realize that value, and it's been so great because I listened to like Stephanie, who's been talking about our relationships with money. And we know that you're going to be talking, you and Yasmin are going to be talking about our relationships with, wellness. And then we have relationships with what Jennifer is going to be covering, which is about how we make those tough decisions and stay in our integrity while doing it, and to work through those processes. So all of it is this relationship, and all those relationships are driven by our past in reality, and experiences that we're having in the past, in the present. So a lot of what we're going to talk about today is sort of the how do we really build those epic relationships. And a lot of it has to do with communication, and how we take that communication, what we learn from it, but also the fact that communication, and you know this, I know this, but most of communication is not really about talking, even though we're going to do a lot of that today. It's about listening and being aware. And when you really can step into that, then the world sort of opens up in terms of, what you get to experience. Because we can't experience anything beyond ourselves unless we let, others come into that sphere for us, and really take note of the people around us, the things around us, and the experiences that we have, rather than just going through the actions of life, really embracing every experience for what it has to offer. So we're going to talk about that today, and be rolling through, and Dottie's going to be hearing some of these, because I put this content together, and I got to tell you, it's really special for me. And what I did was I went back through all of my my own journal writing. And I don't know, do you do journal writing, Dottie, at all? Have you done much?
I have many times through the years, and I think it's not as in-depth journal writing as it used to be. It's more like little notes, and I do it a lot electronically. But I used to, I look up on my shelf, and I have just books and books. And sometimes I go back and read them, and it's a little bit scary.
Your notes. Oh yeah,
It's a
absolutely.
good reminder though of where I've been and where I am now, and that, you know, I'm still evolving every single day.
Yeah, it's funny, and I probably shouldn't share this, but I will because I thought it was funny. My son reminded me of this. We were talking about kind of when you stop growing, and a very good friend of ours who's funnier than heck, I have to be honest with you, but he says, you know, when you really stop growing, you become stagnant, and when you become stagnant, you really stop living, and when you stop living, you start to rot, and when you rot, you stink, and when you stink, nobody wants to be around you. And
oh, sure, that's so true.
I thought that was kind of funny. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hopefully successfully be screen sharing.
Yeah, I'll let you
Let me know, if I'm doing
seeing it and all.
the little bit of the challenge.
While you're getting that, Cheryl, I might just share that I'm just going to own it. I'm a recovering perfectionist, and every day, you know, I do see that, but every day I have to remind myself that it's not about trying to let people know how perfect I am. I can stay in my greatness and own my value without working to come across as if I'm perfect. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of that comes from the past, and I had to let a lot of that go. But I know that it's made my relationships richer as I went away from that path, because that path would have me focusing on me, and now I can just celebrate other people. And wow, is it so much more productive?
Yeah. You know, it's funny because when you can really, and I was sharing that little story about David the other day, saying that, you know, he thinks his dad grew up that day because he read on the wall that you grow up the day that you have your first good laugh at yourself. Yeah. And I thought that was funny, but it's true. And I think when we stop, you know, trying to be perfect, and we realize that some of the best moments in life come from, I keep thinking of the night that you and I sat up till 3 o'clock in the morning working on stuff, and you gave me a gold star for my forehead, and we sat and laughed like, you know, two little kids over that. And it's just, those are the moments where you realize, you know, that being perfect is really not fun at all. So
well, nobody identifies with it, you know, and so they don't hear their story in your perfection.
Right.
And it makes people, if they actually buy into it and believe it, then they're going to feel less than. And
right.
If you're contributing to people feeling less than, that relationship is not going to be a growing relationship.
Exactly. So
for your business, you know, because we're talking about, you know, you can't really separate totally personal and business because they all impact one another. But, you know, we are looking at how do relationships impact your business.
Exactly. And so that's what we're going to start to talk about. But you're going to find that it doesn't, a lot of what we share, not just today, but really for the rest of the week, is really about having those transparent conversations and communications and connections in an authentic way that really is not, you can have them with your family, you can have them with your coworkers, you can have them with other entrepreneurs, you can have them as you're making new connections, right? It's really about staying in that space of really trying to connect with people in a genuine and authentic way. So I'm gonna, Dottie, what I'm gonna try to do is share a few slides and then come back to us, because I hate the fact that we, you know, here we are talking about relationships and connecting, and then we look at a PowerPoint. And so, but I assume you can see my screen. Should I go to the big slideshow?
Yeah, try going to the big. And, you know, while you're doing that, Cheryl, something that you said about the being authentic, and for our businesses, I just want to remind people, I think this is what happens when people do get online. They start attempting to create a brand and a persona, and I get that. But sometimes what they try to present has nothing to do with reality. And it's better, I would say this, it's better to learn something very well, some skill perhaps that you can help somebody else with, and you'll be their expert and they'll love you for it. And right. You will be branding yourself. But, you know, don't try to get online and act like you're the biggest guru since, you know, things are going. Because I say that guru really stands for G-U-R-U. And that's a great kind of guru when you're being you. But when you're being something you're not yet, it backfires on you. So be careful.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so we're gonna start with the first one.
I'm not seeing it big.
You are seeing it big or you're not?
No.
I'm sorry, say it again. Yes or no?
No.
No. Okay. Well, it's big on my screen, so I guess maybe.
Well, go ahead and try to move it forward and see if it engages. Right now, I'm seeing it just with the ones on the side.
We had this happen the other day too, and I'm not sure what settings to change because it's big on my
To be
screen.
quite honest, sometimes I think it's a Google thing, and sometimes it engages properly, and sometimes it just doesn't. Just so I
see what you see, I'll just go back to my regular screen then. But that way it makes more sense, I guess. But then I can see what's coming up on my next slide that way.
Right.
No, I'm kidding.
We can see it, so.
Okay, yeah. So the first thing is to listen with your heart, and this really is exactly what we're talking about right now, Dottie, because it's kind of like.
Cheryl, I hate to interrupt you, but it still says 11 ways to make your relationships epic. Is that what you're intending for it to be on?
Nope, it needs to switch. So
okay,
what do I?
You might have to go back and re-screen share, and but otherwise you should be able to make it move forward there.
Nope, I clicked the chat button. That won't do me any good, will it?
Okay. And now we're dealing with our relationship to our computer, and now I see me, so you'll have to get over to the.
Let me go back to the big screen here.
Okay.
I want this one. Okay. Now you see the slide.
It says 11 ways to make your relationship epic.
What about now?
Now it's moving.
Okay. So let me try the big screen from this setting and see if.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yes, it sure is.
Okay, there you go. I just probably clicked on the wrong thing initially. Okay, so now we're off and running. Woo, exciting. I was going to switch back and forth, but maybe I won't, given my inability to do that. So the first one was, and this is exactly, Dottie, what we were just talking about, which is to listen with your heart. And I know that you have experienced this. We've all experienced it. We've all done it, to be honest with you, where you're in a room, and we'll just say we're having that one-on-one conversation with someone. And have you ever talked to someone and you know they're not really listening to you? They're already thinking about their answer to what how they're going to respond. So the biggest communication problem is we do not listen to understand, we listen to reply. So instead of really hearing that person and really being with them, we're already thinking about how we're going to respond or how we're going to get our 2 cents in the conversation. And I know we all do that, but that's a skill that if you can learn how to really listen to people and listen with your heart and think about it that way, it can just make a huge impact on the person who's receiving, your listening. Basically, does that make sense? And I know you've had that experience as well, probably.
Yeah, it really does, Cheryl. And this is, wow, you just hit the nail on the head. And I don't care how much any of us have been coached, or in the world. This is a good reminder for every single day. And I think part of it, Cheryl, is that we live in a really busy world. And sometimes we're distracted. So just being present in the moment, because I like to truly believe that other people do want to hear us. But sometimes, they just have things going on.
Yeah.
So it's just a great reminder. Excellent one.
It is. And I know sometimes I've talked to that person who you feel like the whole time they're talking to you, that they're looking around the room, seeing if there's somebody more important they should be talking to.
Yeah.
We've all had that, and we've probably all done it. So I think it's just a really great way of putting that reminder out there. This one we actually touched on yesterday, and this. And Jennifer actually brought up the golden rule, which I think most people do know, that you would want to treat others as you would want to be treated. But the platinum rule is that to treat others as they would like to be treated. And as you know, Dottie, and I'm going to give you a second to really shine here in a moment, because I, as you know, sometimes that's hard. Like, how do we know? How do we know how other people want to be treated, right? After we get to know them. But when you're first meeting someone, or you're just starting to work with someone, that's kind of a tough thing, right? To really know what that person's needs are, or how receive information or how they communicate. So a couple of things I wanted to share though, and then we're going to talk about Epic, because that's really what started, your Epic journey, was this wonderful idea around how to really get to know someone in 90 seconds or less. So, but there are some other things, like there's you can obviously take personality tests that are out there. And I have a couple that I love. They're shorter, that don't take forever to do. There's also, the 5 love languages, which I think you've probably read that book as well, Dottie.
It's great. I love it.
It's a great book, right? And so the 5 love languages, we'll probably talk a little bit more on Friday, but it's really a great way to sort of, especially for the people you're closest to in your life, but anyone really, to understand that piece and what's important to them. So I always tell the story of, I used to drag my son David around the room. Like, he would grab onto my leg. He was 2. He's 23. He doesn't do it anymore, which is good, because I couldn't pull him if I wanted to. But I used to literally, no matter what I was doing, this kid was just clinging to my leg, right? And I was sort of pushing back all the time, because I was like, just give me some space to breathe, right? So it was like this battle that we were having. And so when I did give in, it was sort of giving it in to him but not in a way that was loving at times. You know what I'm saying? Because I was worn out from it. And when I read the 5 love languages, it made me realize that David's love language is physical touch.
Uh-huh.
The only thing I changed was that in the morning, I would get up just a little bit earlier, and for 10 or 15 minutes, that was our time. And he would sit on my lap. Sometimes we'd, play a game, but he was sitting right next to me or on my lap, or we were reading a book together, or whatever it was. And it as long as we did that, it wasn't a gradual change. It was an immediate change, because his love tank was full for the whole day until I got tired again, But that was so important for me. And I realized my other son, I could give him a perimeter hug. He doesn't really want, don't be giving him big bear hugs. He doesn't want it. David will take it all day long. Brian, give him words of affirmation, lift him up, tell him he can do something, and you'll hit beyond measures. So there are so many wonderful tools out there, but they take time, and they really take the building of a relationship over time. Everything I've ever found, except one tool, and we're going to talk even more about this later in the week too, Dottie, but I really think what you've created with the Epic is so powerful, and it's really powerful because it takes 90 seconds or less. So I just wanted to give you a chance to kind of talk about that a little bit and share with people, because it's a powerful tool that allows you to treat others as they would like to be treated.
Yeah, one of the gifts that we are giving each person who participates in what we're calling our Get Your Biz Lean. See, when you're getting your biz lean, you have to look at all facets. And that's why we looked at Mind Shift the first week. And then Stephanie did finances, and we're looking at relationships to your business. And then we'll cover well-being, and then we'll cover how to be solution focused rather than problem focused, so that you can move forward in your business. And so we wanted to gift people something. And what we're doing is actually online, okay? And we have a link that people can go to that we've given them when they're, going to over to 247epicentrepreneurs.com, and they can click on the button and get this. But I actually have cards, Cheryl, when we're in front of people. And these cards enable people, I just actually say, hey, do me a favor. Take a look at these cards. And what do people do when you ask them to take a look? They actually look at the cards. And then I simply say, put the values on the cards that are most important to you on top, down to the values that are least important on the bottom. This is going to save us time and energy. It's going to help me understand how we can work together better in the future. So in those 10 seconds, I spoke in all 4 languages, or codes, so to speak. Now, people are always interested, because we're interested in ourselves, right? I mean, we do want to learn, what makes me tick? Why do I do things the way I do? And that's great, because you learn a lot about yourself, and with the online tool, you actually get a detailed report, and that's a value of $75 that you get at no cost, complimentary from us. Now, if you have that tool itself, and that report, by the way, is called Epic TAP. That stands for Total Assessment Personality Profile Report. And when you have the Epic TAP tool, that means you have a link, and you can send that to someone, and they can discover their Epic code. But you also get an aggregated report all about them. So it tells you what motivates them, their likes, their dislikes. And this becomes very valuable, Cheryl, because going back to what you're saying, it puts the emphasis on them. I mean, imagine going to a party and never feeling again like you're out in the dark or all alone or isolated and don't know what to say. Have your cards with you and make it all about them. And I promise you, the person will go over to the host or hostess at the end and say, so-and-so is the best person you had at the party. And you know what? Because you made it all about them. You asked them about themselves. It's so rare that people really, really do that. So really, it's a way of learning their Epic language. And I would say, Cheryl, if I know that you speak French and I speak French and English and you don't speak English and I just keep blabbing to you in English, I'm not being very respectful, you know, but I'm respectful and honoring of you. Even if my French isn't the best, you will love that I try a few words, right?
Absolutely.
And say something to
Absolutely.
you. You feel like, wow, I matter. So anyway, that's just a short piece about how that can work and how you can look at the other person and really make them the focus.
It is so powerful, and this is obviously something we'll be delving more and more into, Dottie. I know as you build this out with too, this goes on, it's going to be great, and it's already great. And I think I shared with you that my son actually used to, with a girl he was dating just recently, and they'd only been on their second or third date, and he went ahead and coded her.
Yeah,
and it was
that's
great.
awesome.
But they had fun discussing it, and they kind of really got to know each other instead of just having superficial conversation. They had some really great conversations. So it was really powerful, and it can be fun. It is fun to discover that about yourself. So,
hey, Cheryl, let me just add one thing. A lot of people say, hey, is this like Myers-Briggs? Is this like DISC? Is this like the love language? And, those are great. I've done all of those. I love the personality profiling. And I say, you know what? It's exactly the same and it's totally different.
mm-hmm.
Here's the big distinction. Those you cannot do, I don't care which one it is, you cannot do it in under 90 seconds. And people are amazed with what they learn in under 90 seconds. And so therefore, because it is that short window, if you're doing anything and you're going to have to get somebody's buy-in on something, okay, that means sales. Well, the only way you're not in sales in life is if you're not alive. Everybody has to get a buy-in on something with your child, with your spouse, or whatever you're doing. And so when you're able to get that buy-in and know what their language is in under 90 seconds and speak to them in that way, you have a lot better chance of having success. So the others are not bad or wrong, but this really begins to put the focus on the other person. And that's the switch as well. It's reverse engineering what we're doing.
It is. And what it does is, Dottie, you're right, 90 seconds is so defining for it, but also it talks about values and how, and it's not about personality, but what people really truly value. And I think that's so, so important. And what it allows us to do is what can you see my next screen here, which is,
yes, it's right up there.
This has been so exciting for me because I came up with this concept of a dot concept, and I'll tell you how it evolved. It'll make a lot of sense to you, but it fits, and it's so funny because that's why I had to have Dottie on for Be a Dot Day, right? Because that's really, in fact, pay attention to this screen the most, if you will, because at the end, this is where the homework's going to come in. We're going to do homework around Be a Dot, but how this evolved for me, and I think if you understand sort of that, but now it fits so well with what with the Epic coding piece, is because now if you know what somebody values, you can really be a dot for them. And what a dot is are drops of thought. And I'll explain the screen in a second, but this started with a friend of mine named Amy. Love her. She's a coach. She's just an amazing person. And she, one day we were talking, and I was sharing with her that I was sort of having, just this the challenge for myself of really getting to where I was stretching, and I just felt tight all the time, and I wasn't taking deep breaths. And, and so we were having a good conversation, and she said, well, can I share with you what I do in the mornings? And I said, sure. So she showed me this little routine that takes like 10 minutes, and I still do it to this day. I don't do it every day like I should, but I do it a lot of mornings. And it's very, very helpful. There was one part of it you were supposed to spin around in circles, and I had to quit that because it was just making me nauseated. But it was good. So I really appreciated that. And I said to her, thank you for that. And I was talking to her also at the time about some marketing ideas. And she said, she said, I think you just experienced my marketing. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, she says, I don't ever really do a lot of marketing. She said, because I just go out and I try to add value to people's lives. Yeah. She said, I don't really go out and solicit for new clients or whatever. She said, because all of them come from referrals, and they come from people that I've never even coached, but because I just gave them something, like a little idea or a thought or something that would improve their life. She said, that's what I do. And I just go out and try to add value or make a difference. And even if it's in a small way in someone's life, when I meet someone, if I can.
Yeah. Oh, that's so, gosh, Cheryl, I gotta just say that is a gold nugget
in a half, right?
That is a 5-star gold nugget.
It is. I want 5 stars or 5 on my forehead now, right? 5.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, so that stuck with me, right? And it really was a great thought for me, because I know sometimes we get in businesses and we're always out like, who can I talk to? If you just every day just stay in the space of how can I improve someone's life when you meet them? And guess what? It comes by listening. So that really was powerful for me. But then fast forward a little bit, I'm having a conversation with my husband one day, and I watched a little video that kind of prompted this conversation, and I can't even remember what the video was. I went back to try to find it, and I can't. But he says, sometimes I get frustrated with my patients because, they come to me for help, and then I try to give them ideas of how they can change their life. And he said, and then they walk out and they don't do it. And, and so we started this whole conversation that day around, I said, well, maybe, and I was sharing with him what Amy had shared with me. And I said, maybe you just be a dot, right? Because maybe somebody needs to hear that you need to drink more water. Maybe they need to hear it 40 times, right? And so, and maybe you're not the 40th dot, but maybe you're the 20th. And you are a dot in that pathway that they have to take to drink more water. And so if they hear it enough times, maybe somebody will hear it 100 times and it won't until they, get dehydrated, end up in the hospital, and, then they'll learn. But what if you offer those things and you don't realize that you're just putting positive into someone's life, and maybe you don't get to see the moment that shift happens. And I really wish I'd put time for a shift and shift at the end there on the time for a change. But there's all these little drops of thought, which is what a dot is, right? It's just a drop of thought that you share with somebody to improve their life. And maybe there's people like maybe Bob gives them one, and then I do, and then Dottie. And then maybe it's Dr. Oz, who, by the way, is what we call a big dot, right? Because he's, and you know why he's a big dot? Because he has given drops of thought over a really long period of time to a lot of people. And he now can say something, and this is kind of funny, because with Bob, he's told his mom, things over the years, like about how to eat or whatever, and he'll tell her 15 times, and she doesn't do any of it. And then she'll go, oh, you know what I heard on Dr. Oz today? You know what he said? And Bob goes, man, it just irritates me. But that's what Dr. Oz has done. And as entrepreneurs, if we do, like you were talking earlier about, we don't come out to just be experts, and you don't earn that credibility overnight. You do it by staying true to just helping people in an area that you can. And over time, not only do they get the value, but you get more value as you share with more people who share back. And so your drops just become more often, and over time you can too become a big drop. Now, Dr. Oz is obviously a really big drop, but the point of this is that if you go out every day and you just look for those, as Amy would do, to put something valuable into someone's life and you give them a drop of thought, that you may be one of the drops that they needed for them to make a shift. And once in a while, you might get to be the dot that actually creates that change for them and that shift in their life. So I told Bob, I said, stop being frustrated with your patients. Just go be a drop and be okay with it. Just know that you're still maybe a really big, important piece of one drop that they needed on that pathway to get to where they make a change.
And Cheryl, I'm going to offer something that I hope will be helpful for people to understand right now. So what you're saying is go out and give rather than go out and get.
Correct.
But in these little, here, I'm going to pull it back to Bob and being a chiropractor and a doctor. When he gives the dot, there's 4 different ways he can give the dot. Now, if he's going to give a dot about water, then he wants to maybe have a glass of water for that person who's the C for the connector. And he wants to give them a big hug and say, I want you to have water because it's so good for you and I care so much about you. Now, that might not be his style, but it is their style and he needs to understand that. So if he's coded all of his patients, so let's say that it's an E personality, he's going to say, look, Cheryl, I'm going to get right to the point. And he's going to give them 1 dot really quick. If it's an I person, he's going to have a 1-page printout on water, research, If it's a P person, he's going to have something about the process of water, okay? A few bullet points on that piece of paper, but nothing more, not just all data written out. So you see how quickly you could shift how you even implement the dot if you knew how the person receiving the information received their information. Because the first code, their primary code, is how people like to receive information. So it's no wonder that we often don't hear the information that's being shared, because most often we share it the way we like to receive it.
Absolutely. And that's true. We do that with everything. We tend to think, I know that's true in the 5 love languages, right? Because we think that everybody wants to give love in the same way that we want to receive it, and vice versa. And the truth is that you're right, Dottie. If maybe they wouldn't need 40 drops, right? If each one of those drops actually was given to them in a way that was in their epic language.
Yeah, you could decrease the number of drops to their growth cycle.
Yeah.
And that would be success.
Right. And then you're even a really important drop, because you're really giving it to them in a way they can receive it. So that's really good. So for the E, we could just say drink water or die.
Yeah, they'll get that.
So this whole be a dot thing, I think, is so powerful. And if you just go out with that mindset of how you just make a difference and add value to someone's life, and if you can, and then do the epic, that you can really be a powerful dot in someone's life on their journey to connecting all those dots to where they actually have enough of them to make a change in their life and shift. So shift happens, right?
Hey, Cheryl, I'll just real quickly, if somebody's listening, they going, gosh, I want to do that online. You just go to discoveryourepiccode.com/E3. Okay. That's for us expert epic entrepreneurs. So it's just, again, discoveryourepiccode.com/E3. So very simple. And you can get your, full-blown report complimentary.
Yeah, and Dottie, we won't get into this today, but and this is that as after someone, even if you're doing an online marketing strategy with it, and you get that piece of information, then when you are communicating with that person, your communications reflect.
Yes.
Even through your own marketing efforts, which is a drip campaign, not to be confused with this drop of thought campaign. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was the third thing. 4 is explore your common ground authentically. And this is where I want to share a little video that I think is pretty funny. But I think this is another space that we need to be in terms of really looking for, I talk about celebrate our differences. And one day somebody said to me, well, shouldn't we celebrate our common ground? Well, sure. You should always celebrate your common ground. But man, what if you could learn to celebrate your differences as well? because that's where, because you'll find in that, if you can have an honest dialogue around that, there's a lot more common ground there probably than you realize anyway, right? We all have a way of getting from point A to point Z, and we might get there differently, but at the end, we both want the same thing. We both want to go from A to Z. It's just we have different pathways and different ways of getting there. And so this is to look for those common ground that you might have authentically. And this video is really meant to be more fun than anything, but just to say that there's not really a, although obviously Epic sort of offers that pathway better, but there's really not a formula you can just go, wait, I'm just going to go out and, you know, connect with people. It takes some time, it takes energy, and it takes some really heartfelt, I think, awareness to really make authentic connections. And so if I do this correctly, hopefully I will.
So Cheryl, one thing is, I think people, one of the things that we can remind people of is that we live in a both and world, not an either or. So it's not a matter of celebrating their differences or exploring common ground. It's a matter of exploring common ground and celebrating differences.
It is. There's no question. And I think that is the point, is that we want to be in that space of you're right, of accepting both. Okay, so this is about,
I can see it.
You can see it. Okay, so
if it's a cone, is it? Yeah.
I believe I've isolated the algorithm for making friends.
Sheldon, there is no algorithm for making friends.
Well, hear him out. If he's really onto something, we could open a booth at Comic-Con, make a fortune. See, my initial approach to Kripke had the same deficiencies as those that plagued Stu the Cockatoo when he was new at the zoo.
Stu the Cockatoo? Yes, he's new at the zoo.
It's a terrific book. I've distilled its essence into a simple flow chart that will guide me through the process.
Have you thought about putting him in a crate while you're out of the apartment?
Hello, Kripke. Yeah, Sheldon Cooper here. It occurred to me that you hadn't returned any of my calls because I hadn't offered any concrete suggestions for pursuing our friendship. Yet perhaps the two of us might share a meal together. Yeah, I see. Well, then perhaps you'd have time for a hot beverage. Popular choices include tea, coffee, cocoa. I see. No, wait, don't hang up yet. But what about a recreational activity? I bet we share some common interests. You tell me an interest of yours. Really? On actual horses? Tell me another interest of yours. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I have no desire to get in the water till I absolutely have to. Tell me another interest of yours.
Uh-oh, he's stuck in an infinite loop.
I can fix it. It's interesting, but isn't ventriloquism by definition a solo activity? Yeah. I mean, tell me another interest of yours. Is there any chance you like monkeys? Yeah, what is wrong with you? Everybody likes monkeys. Hang on, Kripke. A loop counter and an escape to the least objectionable activity. Howard, that's brilliant. I'm surprised you saw that.
Gee, why can't Sheldon make friends?
All right, Kripke, that last interest strikes me as the least objectionable, and I would like to propose that we do that together. Tomorrow. Yes, I'll pay. All right, goodbye. All right. Time to learn rock climbing.
Oh my goodness. I had to keep myself from laughing. I was like, oh, I can't, oh, I love that.
Yeah. So it'd be really nice if we could just plug in a formula, and run through that. But obviously relationships take a little bit more work than that. So, anyway, I did get a kick out of that.
The closest thing that comes to the formula is that platinum rule. Seriously. Yeah. And which entails listening to other people and acknowledging them. Everybody loves to be acknowledged. I always say, raise your hand if you don't like to be acknowledged. Nobody raises their hand. I don't care what their code is. They just like to be acknowledged in different ways.
Right. No, and so the relationships do take work, but it's so worth it, as we know. And when you have that honest connection with someone, and sometimes, you know what, there's people that aren't going to be probably a big piece of your life, right? At times. And that's okay too. But at least you can have an honest conversation about, your common ground, as well as maybe the things where you don't have those common grounds. But anyway, the fifth one was to become a balcony person. And, this just has really always resonated with me. And the book is really a short little book. And I don't know if this one's actually out of print now, so it's hard to even get your hands on it. Although obviously with Amazon, you can usually find it. But I don't know if this.
Writing that down, I don't have it, but I love what you say up there about the ones who succeed are those who get inside a player's heart.
Yeah, I thought, I put that on there knowing that I saw that quote and I thought Dottie will love that, right?
Oh.
Because but what a balcony person isn't, sometimes we have, this little book is really all it talks about, and it's not a big book at all, but it talks about the fact that in our lives, we have people who are in the balconies, who are cheering us on, who see our potential, and who want us to become the best version of whatever it is we can be. Then there's the people that are the basement people. And sometimes the basement people, they love you even. You know what I'm saying? But they operate off of fear, and I use my mom in this example, and I don't mean it in a bad way, but my mom was just so, always like, I just don't know how you do all you do. And I'm just worried about you. You just seem like you run all the time like a crazy person. And I just, and I was happy in my space. Right. And so, but she always kind of wanted me to not, I guess, become everything that I could be, because it made her uncomfortable. And sometimes you have people who really are basement people. She didn't do it. She did it out of worry. But sometimes people don't want you to succeed. They don't want you to, and to really excel, because you know what, if you do, then they have to look at themselves. And it's not, and just where they are in their journey, and it's not a judgment, but you do sometimes have to make those considerations of the people you want to surround yourself with.
Wow, that's what Stephanie talked about, with her book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who are the people in your life? But what I love about the book is the whole goal of the book is for you to become a balcony person for other people. Mm-hmm. And so how do you stand in the balcony for the people that you can, see their potential and lift them up? And it's just a wonderful little story about identifying the balcony people so you can truly, really embrace those people into your lives. But then how do you become that person as well for other people?
Absolutely. I love that.
So that's one of my favorites. And, all these come from me going back through all my journals of writing, and I picked out the 11. 11's like my lucky number, so that's why I rarely do 10, because most people, I always do my top 11, even when I work out. And call me goofy, but I never do like 10 push-ups. I always do 11. If I'm going to do more than that, that's fine. But I would never do 10. It would always be 11. So
that's great. One to grow on.
One to grow on, exactly. So the sixth one is the embrace a person's story without judgment. And I'm going to go through this, and then Dottie, I want you to obviously maybe even talk about the this one too. I know this will be important, thing for you to share as well with some of your past journeys. But when you embrace a person's story without judgment, you should never do that, right? You don't need to judge it, because you know what? Unless you really know how many hats they wear, and unless you've really seen the shoes that they wear and walked a mile in their shoes, unless you really can look and know what their life experiences have been up to this point in their past, in their childhood, yesterday, and what it is that they might really be hiding behind in terms of a mask that they wear, you don't know. And there's a really wonderful little video out there I'm going to try to find, where it shows this guy who's looking around, and above everybody, you can see that this person just lost, this person just came from the doctor's office and got bad news. And, just all those things that we don't know what people walk around with and what they're carrying, because sometimes they have a mask on. And it's not for us to judge anyone. And even after even if you knew every single bit about somebody else, you don't have their perspective on life. Those are the rose-colored glasses, right? So you don't know what glasses they're looking through and how they see the world and how they experience it, because nobody experiences the same thing exactly alike. So really, you embrace a person's story without judgment. Even if you knew everything about them, it's still not to be judged. And
I had this story told to me one time, and I don't know, maybe it was made up, maybe it wasn't, but it makes a good point. And it was about somebody was riding on the subway in New York, and there was a man sitting there with two children, and they were just acting up, and this person was just judging. You know what I'm saying? Just judging. And the story goes that they finally said something to him about, you really need to control your children. And all of a sudden he was just brought out of his stupor, and he said, I am so sorry. Said, my wife just died, and I'm just so sorry. So he was oblivious, and the kids were upset. And that was one of those judgment things. And of course, the person immediately was like, I am so sorry. You know what I'm saying? I mean, because they were coming from a place of judgment because of their observing of how these kids were acting, and they shouldn't be acting. I get teary-eyed just thinking about it, and here was this real experience, and it changed how they saw things.
Exactly. And you know what that does is it brings us to this. You have to be open to a paradigm shift, and that's what that was for them, right? It's a paradigm shift. And I think we all have to be, I mean, I will just tell you, when somebody flies by me on the highway, you want to just say, what a jerk, right? But you don't know. Maybe they're rushing somebody to the hospital. Yeah. I mean, so I try to give people what I call the benefit of the doubt. Now, sometimes people don't deserve it. I mean, come on. We know sometimes people are just, but most of the time people come by whatever it is and the moment they're in, honestly. And it's just life experience. And so being open to a paradigm shift. I was going to put up the little image I showed you last night about Kermit the Frog. Oh. Some really bad news, and he has an X-ray of the hand, inside of Kermit. I'll put that one in there at some point because that was actually pretty funny. But this is really more about seeing the world a little bit differently and being open to the fact that we don't know everything that somebody's going through. Yeah. And I think it makes it easier sometimes when you would get angry with someone or upset with someone to just sit back and have that perspective.
Yeah, so true.
So communicate more when the times are tough. And you and I talked about this last night, right? When things aren't going exactly right, I think sometimes people don't want to deal with the fact that they're not. So there's this lack of communication that breeds assumptions of what the other's thinking or feeling, or more often than not, they're incorrect. I mean, it's really just, there's so much power to communication. In fact, I think I had shared, and actually I don't know if I shared this yesterday, but diet, exercise, and communication are the three things that we kind of joke around and say could solve almost every problem in life, right? And it probably doesn't solve every, but man, if you think about it, there's very few things that if there was really good communication, positive, not just positive, but meaningful communication happening around something, our issues could be solved. It's when there's the of that communication that is really when the relationship or the real challenges come to life, and the relationship itself can start to die. So, and Dottie, I'll liken it to, and this is a really simplistic example, and I'll let you share too, because I know experienced this even in some companies that we've been in, where we don't hear anything, and to us it seems like the whole thing's falling apart because there's no communication. Right. And yet, maybe there were things going on, but everybody starts assuming and making maybe inaccurate assumptions about what's happening, and maybe because it wasn't what they thought we wanted to hear, they disappeared, and that's not leadership, and that's not a relationship. Real relationships step up in times when things are tough. But I even liken it to, if you're sitting in a doctor's office and you're waiting, you start to go, wow, man, I've been sitting here for half an hour and I've not even been acknowledged. But if twice during that half an hour they had come out and said, hey, I know you're sitting out here, it's, we're really backed up for this reason or that reason, we're getting, I just want you to know, we know you're out here, acknowledged. Yes. If you don't have the answer for them in that moment, even if you can't see them right away as a doctor, that communication of you're important, and and we're acknowledging that you are waiting, it can take all that away. And it's the same half hour, but it's how you get to experience that half hour and how you choose to communicate with someone during it. So, but I know you and I were just talking about the communication and how important it is when things aren't going well. It's probably more important than ever.
Yeah, Cheryl, one of the things, communication and marketing are a little bit similar in that when times are tough, you don't need to do less. You need to do more. A lot of people say, well, I don't have the money, so they pull out of their marketing budget. And that's really when you need to market more. I mean, when everything's flush and going good, you may not need to do as much. Who knows? You can adjust it. Just like in communication, a lot of people, when I hear people saying, we didn't speak for 4 days, really? Robbie and I have this saying, we actually went to the Gottman Institute. They're called, what they have, the Love Lab. But we actually have this paper, it's called the Aftermath of a Fight. I would just say aftermath of any disagreement. But it starts with step one. And if you can't think of what your feelings are in the moment, you actually have a sheet where you can say, I feel. And one thing we've learned with that is you can't argue with the feeling. Like, Cheryl, if I said, you said, I feel sick, I could say, well, Cheryl, you don't look sick, but I couldn't argue with your feeling.
Right.
And it's a very simple process, actually. And step two is one of the most interesting. You have to tell your subjective reality. And you have to start off with, my subjective reality is. Well, when I say my subjective reality is, that automatically communicates to you, Cheryl, that I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just telling you how I see it. And so once you share your subjective realities, you have to find something in there that you can understand about what the person said, and you acknowledge that. And then 3 is find something in his or her story. That's the third part that you can understand. You have to look at, are you flooded? Flooded means your heart rate goes above 100 beats a minute, which is why sometimes people don't want to deal with things in the moment, and that's fine. But 20 minutes, your flooding can be over. And this is with business as well. I'm talking about all of these kind of situations. And, the 4th step is admitting your own role in something. Just like Brene Brown and, what she shares about vulnerability. And then the last thing is you have to say what you can do differently next time when this situation comes up, and what you would like differently next time from the other person. So, you can go through those very quickly, but that doesn't allow us to escape. And I've had people use these in business as well as in personal, and they work.
Yes. Yeah. And we're going to even jump into some of that. Because as you know, I have the whole above the mark concept too, which is really about stepping up and taking ownership.
Yeah.
And so it kind of plays into some of the things that you're talking about there in terms of what's our responsibility in the moment, right? Because if we just blame someone else, we give our power away to that person, or the situation. And only when we own our own piece of it, can we actually make a change and move forward. So anyway, we'll talk a little bit about that when we get into some of those discussions. I think that's on Thursday maybe, but yeah, absolutely. So to give with no strings attached, and I know we got about 3 more here to go, and I want to make sure we stay within sort of the hour here, but you give with no strings attached. And I don't know if you've ever heard of a WIFM, and it reminds me of a person whose name I won't say, but it doesn't matter what you talk to this person about, they always know what's in it for me. And what if there wasn't anything in it for you? What if you, again, this is what Amy did. We're back, it's sort of the same concept, right? What if you just go out and you don't really have strings attached? You're just going out trying to add value into someone's life. And you're not really always focused on what's in it for me. And so it's just probably another way of thinking about that one. But I thought that, sort of powerful, opposite way of thinking about it in terms of, just. No,
that's great.
Out and sharing. So 10, I thought you'd love this. Write notes of encouragement. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but he gets a letter and he's this was 15 years ago. Then he gets a ding, you've got mail. He's so excited. Now today, he gets 220 unread emails, and then he gets a letter. Oh my God.
I love it.
It's so true, right? We have come such full circle on this. And Dottie, you are so good about this. Was one of my New Year's resolutions at the beginning of the year this year, was to start writing more notes of encouragement, or writing notes of thank you, or writing notes, or just acknowledgement, right? Just because it's so powerful now to get something snail mail.
Yeah.
Because we
Kind of stands out.
stands out, right? So it's a very, very powerful way to communicate when you can. And I just would encourage, I mean, I just started doing it. It's just one of those things that I think if you could just figure out how to incorporate it in, it's just a really powerful thing. And so now I have a bunch going out. I just got to go get the stamps. That's all.
There you go.
That last step. I thought I had stamps here, but anyway.
Well, Jen's going to help you with how to be, solution focused and get that stamp on there.
That stamp on there, man. And then this is the last one. And actually, we'll talk a little bit about Jen here because I
love it.
talk about, but when I'm going to share something, this just works for me. It may not work for everybody. And I know Jen's going to share some amazing things about being solution oriented. Easy for me to say. But make communication decisions with courage. And what I mean by that is when you're especially in the middle of a tough decision for yourself, maybe it impacts other people, especially if you're dealing with other people. But I'd have two questions that I ask myself. The first question is that would I make the same exact decision as I'm thinking I want to make in this moment if I'm walking on a path of love and not fear? Because so many decisions get driven by fear.
Yeah.
And this is really about so I can say, okay, take the fear out of it and kind of get into more of a wonderful space with it and just say, would I make that same decision? Would I walk in love with that decision? Would it be different? The second question I ask, and this comes from reading Eckhart Tolle's book, A New Earth. And I got to tell you, the book was sort of hard for me to get through in the beginning, but once I really got into it, I loved it. But one of the things he talked in there was about letting go of the ego. And I don't think sometimes we want to let go of our ego all the time. I mean, we need our ego. It serves a purpose. But when you're making a decision, what if you let go of your ego for just that moment and said, would I make the same decision if my ego wasn't sitting right in the middle of what I'm doing?
Yeah.
That's a hard one to do. So I really think if we could come up with this, Dottie, we could market it. Ego Begone. For the ultimate experience in clear-minded thinking. It's fast acting. It returns quickly, so you don't have to worry about it being on, and you can get some long-term results from it. So I just thought maybe we should come up with.
It's a good vax. We talk about vax, and I easily let go of ego when it's getting in my way of better communication and doing things better in collaboration.
Yes, exactly. So.
Rather than, kind of fearing that I'm losing it or that it's hard, speak to the ease with which it can happen.
Right. Yeah. So when I go through those two steps, and you're absolutely right, once I go through them, and it doesn't really take that long to do that, and if my answer is the same, I know I'm making a pretty good decision. But if it's not, it sort of prompts me to step back and take a look at it again. And
now, Cheryl, do I spray this on my whole body before I go out of the house? Is it like that tanning stuff, or does it offer SPF?
I don't know. I have to think about that. We'll make it smell pretty, though. How's that? So connection is the energy that is created between people when they are seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment. And of course, we talked a lot about Brene Brown. I love her stuff. Yeah. She's a big dot. She is a big dot for me. So if someone has not read any of her stuff, it's hard to imagine since she was on Oprah and so highly promoted at one point. But if not, then obviously, you should, because she's just got such great stuff. So
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I stopped screen sharing, I believe.
Yep, you're back on.
Back on.
That was fantastic, Cheryl. Oh my gosh, you were so good.
Well, I love the nuggets of life, and that's a lot of what that is. But I think there's some really good stuff in there. And what I wanted to, so the vax you were just doing, let's do that because you were saying the words that you had thought about from with the vax just now about the communication or the making decisions.
Yeah.
So what?
Well, I was just saying, in that case, you were talking about ego and how we want to hold on to it. So you got this spray bottle. So if we were going to do VAX, which is visual, audio, kinesthetic, and sensing, that's what VAX stands for. we make an empowering statement. So if ego has me getting tripped up all the time or getting triggered, I say that when I get triggered, it's never about the other person. And I go, blow them a kiss, because they've just shown me what needs healing inside of me, whether it's in business, personal, or whatever. It's like, you gave me an aha moment, because you can't trigger what doesn't exist. So the ego is getting us tripped up and triggered and costing us relationships, personally or business or whatever. And we're afraid of letting that go. We might have a statement like, I allow my ego to take its proper place, in my life. I mean, that could be a statement. You can make it whatever you want, Cheryl. So I don't know what you had in mind for the relationship piece, but any of that can be done. And take
so I think that's a good one. I allow my ego to be in its proper place, and to be in the place that benefits me,
empowers me, empowers me and others. Okay. Allow my ego to be in a place that not only empowers me but empowers others, or something like that. And you start with the VAKS, so you can actually show them that.
So my ego empowers me and empowers others. Okay. So what you do is you look in a mirror, you can look at each other. Dottie and I are looking at each other, and I can say, Dottie, my ego empowers me and it empowers others. If you have someone you're comfortable with doing that, it's phenomenal, right? To really say it to someone. You can do it in the mirror though, if you can't. And then the second one is to rub your ears. And I always kid and say, it always makes me think, geez, I need to get a massage, because I love. So, my ego empowers me and it empowers others. And you do that while you're, rubbing your ears. And then the third one is to get active. We used to have this guy say, I feel great. So, my ego empowers me and it empowers others. And you get excited about it and you move around. And I won't stand up and dance like I did yesterday. Because I promised my son I wouldn't do that again. Yeah. He's laughing at me. And then the last one is, I said this yesterday, so my favorite is, because you're really coming true to yourself. And that's really what all this was today, was about really coming to the heart of a relationship and what it takes to really build those strong relationships with others. But, my ego empowers me and it empowers others. And I think so if you can every day step into that space, it's a reaffirming. And if you don't think that affirmations work, it's just because you haven't tried them. That they absolutely do work. And I'm looking for one last thing here that I'm going to share.
You know what an affirmation does, Cheryl? It makes a believer out of yourself. Mm-hmm. And if you don't believe in your value and what you have to offer in your business, it's a cinch nobody else is going to, tap into that. When they see your passion and your commitment, and that you truly believe you have value to add to them, then they get on board. And so that's why these things are powerful, and actually connects in neurologically with our brain. There's a whole science behind it, but you can Google that.
And I know when people say, oh, it doesn't really work, it's just because they have never really put it into their life, because it absolutely will work. My son has a whiteboard wall that he made into a whiteboard. Yeah. And on it is that I can't find it. I just had the sheet here the whole time, and now of course it's hiding from me. So I'm going to jump over to something. You won't be able to see it, but I'm just going to read something to you that I wanted to share, because this is the homework assignment, and then we're going to be done. Your homework assignment is to really step into, well, first of all, your homework assignment is to do the VAX, because that's really important, but to step into this awareness of what it could mean to be a dot, right? So this drop of thought that you can start to engage into your life. And I wrote this is funny, I wrote this literally 2 years ago. So this is how long I've been sitting on this, Dottie. To be able to do a hangout with somebody named Dottie, I waited. And so why it's great to be a dot. When you get up in the morning, you can dot yourself. Opportunities to offer dots are everywhere. Dots don't cost money to give, and you can't buy dots from others. So if you receive one, you should make sure you cherish it. There is an endless supply of dots that you can give and receive. You should give out as many sincere dots is possible because you can't take them with you when you go. The dot you give could be not just a dot, but the dot that creates a defining moment in someone else's life, and you get to experience it. If someone really doesn't like your dot that you share, then it maybe just wasn't the right time. If someone really likes your dot, they can share it with someone else as well. The more dots in your life, the more rewarding it will be. And if someone is down, you can dot them. And best of all, even when someone is mean, you can still be nice and dot them. And then you can tell them to go dot themselves.
So you can pay it forward with dots, huh?
You can pay it forward with dots.
I love it. That's awesome, Cheryl.
So that's the homework assignment, and I'll come back over because I'm looking at my screen now instead of you. There we go. So thank you for allowing me to share this today. It was fun putting this together, kind of like a blast from going through all my journals and really pulling this information together, and always a great reminder as we do this kind of thing. So,
well, Cheryl, I really appreciate you being part of the 5 generations of our E3 group, which is, again, expert epic entrepreneurs, coaches, and I so value, what you offer. I mean, you're just, when I've worked with you, I've told you that you've gone, as I've worked with you, you're a 10-star gal. So you just keep, really 11-star. I should always know that you're the 11-star.
Oh, you're right. I gotta have 11. That's a good point. Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, we'll look forward to your training tomorrow, and thank you everybody who either is watching this live or in a recording. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.